I love conferences like this because we get a bunch of brilliant minds, creative minds, people that want to move their ideas forward all in one room, and we can talk about SGRT. I love it. You're going to take your little notes in this section here. You're going to listen to all these great presenters throughout the course of the next couple of days. You're going to get all excited and you're going to go back home to your clinic and you're going to try these things and fail miserably. I'm just kidding. You'll be fine. You'll be just fine. But that's not to say that you're not going to have resistance. Resistance comes with everything. It's going to come with change. It's going to come with a lot of these changes that you're going to try to implement from your conferences that you're going to. And when you go back to your clinic, you're going to run into a lot of people. If it weren't for people, this would be so easy, right? Because it's, just to clarify, it's not the technology, it's not the software, it's not the hardware or anything like that. It's the stupid people with their stupid opinions that have to get in the way of progress, right? I'm just kidding. I'm being a little mean up here, but it's not that, but that's what you will run into, certainly. So my talk today is not going to be about anything technical. It's a little bit different than something that I'm used to presenting. So it's not technical, it's not procedural. What it is about today is how to overcome that resistance that you may run into, how to influence your staff to adopt new techniques. We heard about with our last presenter. He did a great job of giving little pointers and tips in there of what they found that worked for their clinic in a busy clinic to move forward their projects. The name of this overall conference is SGRT, From Theory to Practice. I love that because that's exactly what we're doing here. We're taking all this information in from our lectures and we're going to bring it back to our clinic. The name of my presentation is SGRT Implementation in a Busy Clinic, but really this is for any type of clinic that's out there. Whether you're just looking to get SGRT into your clinic, I'm going to give you some tips ahead of time so that you can get ahead of some of the resistance that's going to be there. And if you're an advanced clinic that has been using surface guidance for quite some time now, I'll give you some pointers to watch out for and how you can move forward from there. I'm sure there's been a lot of people that have attended these conferences and said, that was a great idea, we're going to try that. And then they come back the next year and they still haven't tried it, and you're probably there right now and you still haven't tried some things, or they failed. So we're going to get past a lot of that stuff and move forward. This is our previous SRS system. This is with ZMed. I'm not going to give a talk on SRS, but just to show you where we kind of came from. In 2009, this was the setup that we were doing. I should have put a slide in there prior to this with our frame system, but this is what we have come from. And in 2009, Dr. Policki came to us and said, you know, all that SRS stuff that we're doing, I think I'm just going to take a red light and shine it on a patient's face and track to sub-millimeter accuracy, and we're going to treat like that. I thought he lost his mind. He's crazy to think that, because at the time, there were no other clinics doing this, or at least very few. So to take that concept into clinic and try to convince everybody, you can imagine was quite the hurdle to overcome. We had resistance from neurosurgeons, from our physicists, from our physicians, and certainly our therapists, because it was so different. We've since moved on to a system that's like this, open-face mask system. I'm sure you hear a couple of talks on this today and throughout the conference. But this is where we came from. It took a lot of iterations to get here. We tried Mayo mold, different masks, different headrests, all these things. And all that was trial and improvement. I love this quote. Change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. That's what you're going to run into when we tried to do our SRS cases. You know, it was difficult in the beginning. We didn't have anybody to really look to say, hey, we can treat our SRSs in 20 minutes. We were taking our time with these, learning all the intricacies of it, and eventually you get to a point at the end where this is more accurate for your patients, it's more efficient for your clinic, and your therapists will love it, and everybody on the staff will love it. But in the beginning, it's hard. So when you come to conferences like this and you see clinics that are doing these procedures in their clinic, you know that there's a goal out there that is achievable and other people are doing it. So keep that in mind. So some comments around change, just to maybe just build my credibility a little bit more. We have 3 SGRT systems in our clinic. I go out to some satellite sites as well, so I've trained a lot of clinics and people on how to use the technology. If you have any comments at the end about competencies and things like that, I can certainly help as well. Some comments around change, because everybody loves change so much. How about this one? Ain't nobody got time for that. You don't have time to implement something new into clinic at this time. We're booked every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes. How do you want us to learn some new technology? I'll get into handling all of these comments in the next slide, but this is what you're going to run into. This is another one. It's optional. This is a unique comment to Align RT or Vision RT because it's not a treatment LINAC, right? The therapists don't have to use it in some circumstances. Eventually it becomes so integral into the process that you do need to use it, but sometimes you get into this trap as you're initially starting to use the technology, as you say, instead of doing DIBH for our left breast patients, let's just try it on just a free breathing patient first. And they run into some troubles and they're like, oh, it doesn't work. It's easy to abandon them at that time. So you want to get your team over that it's optional feeling, and eventually it'll be an integral part of your workflow. But we've always done it this way. Dr. Smith went to this lecture. He comes back and says, hey, we're doing things completely different now. Go. That's a tough one. I hear people laughing out there. Am I hitting a note with some people out there? That's great. We've always done it this way. This is my favorite, and I fall into this trap a bunch of times. We tried this back in 2010, and it didn't work. We're not going to do it again. Instant resistance. I fall into this one all of the time, but things change over time. Technology changes, new data comes out, so we need to be willing to try things again. And again, we're going to look to change some of these comments. Nobody trained us, or we got training, or that one person stopped by and our chief did this type of training. It's true. It happens. Maybe people weren't trained. Also, maybe people just don't have the desire to look into it a little bit more. We'll get into that. It's too different. It's too complicated. I'm not touching it. Let's just work around it. And this is the worst one, negative affirmation. You're just waiting for that therapist to say, oh, I told you so. I told you it wasn't going to work. You're going to get this. And this is the same therapist that won't take their time doing the rotations correctly, making sure everything is dialed in, the tolerances are all tight. And when they take a film, it's no surprise that the patient is off from their films, right? They haven't spent the time, but for them, that's their negative affirmation. All right, let's decipher all of these comments because people are actually telling you something. Check out this book. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. It's by Ryan Holiday. It's a great book on stoicism in the face of adversity. What it's actually telling you is sometimes the obstacles that are in front of you are actually making the path more clear to where you need to go. So from the previous slide, a lot of the comments that we heard there are actually indications of what may need to be done. Not enough time. There ain't nobody got time for that is actually some short-term thinking at the time because people don't have the bigger picture. You might have to send people to lectures like this where they hear about we're doing an SRS in 20 minutes, right? In the beginning, it's not going to be that. And if you don't have time, you may need to make time to do that. Our last presenter, that dosimetrist, probably came in at the end of the day to help out that. Was his shirt off? Is that what I saw? That's dedication right there. It's going to take that. You need to take these extreme measures to make extreme changes in your life. It's optional. People can be confused on the purpose. So as I mentioned earlier with the DIBH, just do it free breathing. Let's learn how to set it up. Let's figure it out. People can throw it out very easily because they're not in on the overall purpose of things. The overall purpose is to struggle through it, is to learn, is to take your time on those easy setups, to learn so you're ready for the next step. We've always done it this way. You never want to get in that thinking. always pursuing continuing education on new methods and materials. We tried this back in 2010. This one is poison. I drink this Kool-Aid once in a while as well. Rethinking past experiences. Something happened 8 years ago. It was painful. I'm not going back to it again. It knocks more ideas down than anything else. Nobody trained us. It can be an easy way out if they were trained and you know they were trained. They just don't want to look into it anymore. A lot of the times, it's true though. They didn't get the training that they needed. So that causes a lack of confidence in the system. Find resources. A great way to do this is to have people attend conferences like this, but the follow-up training, I think, is more important than the initial training with things, right? You get your initial training, you go do a couple site visits, you come back to your place, you try to make it work yourself, and then more questions happen at that point. Where do you go to at that point? You need to have somebody else come in. The applications specialist is great. I would almost say try to have somebody come in from another facility that is used to the workflow from the clinical side, come in and show you how you can use it on patients. It's too different, too much information. Well, of course, the unknown is difficult. Think of what some clinics are trying to do here. You're moving from a 3-point tattoo setup to now 1,000 points tracking in real time. What? That's crazy. It's way too much information to handle. Or is it? It's just a different way of thinking, and you need to get comfortable now with that. Again, big picture thinking for your team, understanding the bigger goal of it is more accurate treatments, better reproducibility. And here it is, again, negative affirmation, the sign of resistance within your team. So let's talk about your team once. I love this example of the team of cartoons here trying to pull this cart uphill. This may be what you're trying to work with in your department. Up front, leading the pack, you have your superstar, right? It's probably you in the audience right now. You're going to take things, go back to clinic and say, hey, come on, let's go, gang. Let's take this cart up the hill. Let's move it, right? This is the person that can make minute rice in 58 seconds. They've got it all. They're ready to go. They're willing to do it. Right behind them, you have your doers, okay? A couple of doers there on the side. They're there. They're competent. They may not be the most vocal person, but they're willing to listen. They're willing to help out. They're interested, and they want to help push the cart forward. On the wheel there, I like to call him the coaster, okay? This is that cat that just kind of sits back there and learns how to push some of the buttons and, just, kind of go with it or whatever. But they're not involved. They're not engaged with it. If the leader, if the superstar can turn around and get them engaged, you have more people to push the cart. Tough thing to do. The guy that you want to watch out for is that one at the back, dragging his feet, pulling the cart back. We all know them. We all have them in our clinic. They can be detrimental to any process that we have. Watch out for that guy. And if you don't know that you have one, there's always an I in team, right? They put the I in team. You don't believe me? There's not an I in team? There it is. It's hidden right in the A-hole. Sorry. That's what's going to get the applause here? Jeez. Overcoming resistance. Here are 3 things that you're going to have to deal with here. Credibility equals expertise plus trust. We all know the expert in clinic that thinks they know it all, but nobody trusts them, right? They don't have the credibility. We all know the person in our life that we trust, but we would never give them the keys to their car because they're a terrible driver, right? Expertise plus trust equals credibility. I like what you said before, the previous presenter on, physicians coming back into clinic and saying, hey, we're going to do this now, but then not being a stakeholder in the game. I think that's a major pitfall that clinics will run into if they don't have somebody convinced at the front of the cart, willing to get their boots on the ground and willing to get in the mix just like you were. So congratulations to you. That's a great tactic to use. I wish more clinics would use that advice. Authority doesn't equal your success. Just because somebody can say, hey, we're going to buy this system now, here it is, deal with it, that's never going to work. That person needs to get in, be fully vested in what they're doing. Be a good champion. Stakeholders are a must for this. You're going to have your downfalls. If you show that you are frustrated with the process, other people are going to feel that. If you say, hey, this isn't going to work, or you get convinced, or you kind of fall into the same traps, other people are going to follow that lead and not believe you as well. You need to use some diplomacy. Diplomacy is the art of letting you have my way. Nobody on that one? You didn't like that one? Listen to the objections and the obstacles that are coming. So with the obstacle is the way, a lot of those comments that people were saying are all indications of what they may need. It may be more education, and it may be more time on the schedule or more time to do things. All of those comments are an indication of where you need to go with your team. So go head on against resistance. If you hear some of these things popping up that we don't want to use the technology, it didn't work for this, go against that. And I don't want this one to contradict the previous statement in that you need to listen to those things first and talk later. But it is important to get rid of that resistance within your group. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, but sometimes you just need to tell them to shut the hell up. 3 other wheels are doing the exact same job without complaining. You can take that method. Or my method, squeaky wheel doesn't always get the grease. Sometimes it just gets replaced. Oh, that's harsh. Sorry. No. Actually, for this talk, I talked to a lot of applications training specialists, and one of their tactics that they mentioned all the comments that I put up there, but one of the things that they run into is they often have one of these bad characters in clinic that always wants to question the process. It's not going to work. You can feel them smirking in the corner if a patient doesn't set up correctly. They put 90% of their attention into this person because they understand if you can take the guy at the back of the cart and pull them up to the front to help you out with it, the process there is going to be much easier. Usually that person is the most vocal and most opinionated person in clinic. Spend your energy there, get their buy-in, and it'll be an easier road ahead. This works for smaller groups or smaller teams, departments. If you have a larger department, the tactic that I like to use is to put 90% of my effort into everybody else, understanding that there's going to be resistance out there and not putting my energy into them. And you'll be surprised what happens there. They get outnumbered, and eventually it's in a short turnaround. They'll come join the rest of the team. This is my boy Donnie Clifton here. He wrote this Strengths Finder, Clifton Strengths. You can go to their website. It's a great way to understand the strengths of your team, how to unlock their potential. And a lot of times when you have people go through this, you'll find out that they had hidden strengths that you didn't even know were part of that person. So you can start to tap into those things. When you're talking about creating new procedures and getting people on board to help implement a process, you'll find out their strengths and you can go to them for this. You can go to Clifton Strengths and sign up, enter the promo code Matt Taylor at checkout and save yourself 10% off. Just kidding. Prepare your team for change. I call this greasing the groove. Your team needs to get excited prior to taking on a project. Without excitement, it's not going to happen. Get your team excited for the change. Get them involved. Send them to conferences. Have them talk to other users about it. Make them a stakeholder in it. You can start with small wins, or you can start with big wins if there's a lot of resistance. So the small wins would be if your intent is to do DIBH left breast, maybe start with those free breathing cases, right? Small wins, start adding them up, tacking them up, gaining momentum, gaining confidence in the system. Another tactic that works if you are having resistance in the clinic, one of my favorite stories is we didn't even use this for a DIBH breast patient at the time, but we were having a patient with a lot of difficulty setting up. As she was going through her treatment, all of a sudden she got all this range of motion back, which was great for her, but terrible for her setup because now she had all this flexibility and she was nowhere near her marks. So we decided to move her to another treatment machine that had a line RT, and we used that. And this just convinced everybody in our department that, hey, we need to use this a lot more. It gave us much more information. So that was a big win for us that helped us get over some gaps in training. Initial training is great. Maybe they take you to a location somewhere and teach you the technology of things. You're going to come back to your site and forget half of it already, right? It never works out like that. So you need that follow-up person on site to be there for your first couple of patients. If you can organize that, that's tremendous. And then they're going to leave, and then you're going to forget half of what they said. And you're going to have different questions. So another one is to have another follow-up or just come in contact with a different site that you have a go-to person there for those follow-up setups. SGRT.org. Do I get a commission on that? Oh, there it is, yes. Commission, if you go there. No, this is a great follow-up. There's an excellent forum there. Please sign up and ask away. So moving forward, talked about competencies a little bit out there. You know, kind of a unique thing happened with our department. Even though we're advanced users and we've been using this for a long time, things happen with gaps in training as your department grows, or maybe you add new people into the process, new hires. You want to avoid them not just getting the superficial training. You want to give them the larger training. So something happened at our clinic where we had a string of 2 or 3 DIBH breast patients not breathe into their setup just like we wanted them to. We could have swept it under the rug because everything was lining up okay, but not as good as they usually do. We spent some time back in SIM, and we recently did a new therapist rotation. We had a therapist go back into SIM, and we found out that what they were doing was they thought they were trying to make the process better. They were coaching the patient in between the free breathe and the DIBH. They would go in and say, hey, let's take a test breath, and the patient would look over at them, okay, and they would just relax your shoulders down. So they were modifying the setup in between the free breathe and the breath hold, thinking they were adding to it. But this was a process that was changing the patient's position just slightly that made it a little bit more difficult for them. So doing occasional audits and ensuring that you have great training throughout and everybody understands the bigger picture. Keep pushing forward. We're looking to add different sites for us as well. We're doing this for on-call patients now. I mean, it's one therapist there doing an on-call treatment. They're looking into the room, they're trying to do their calc over here, they're trying to do their imaging. A second set of eyes, Vision RT, fantastic, added it right into the process. You're going to hear about tattooless DIBH or just breast setups or any setups. That's amazing. What a paradigm shift that is for the entire community to have that. So keep trying these things. I encourage you now with these tools to move forward, knowing that there's going to be resistance, but being better able to handle it. And continue education. Continuing education is a great way to engage with the community and keep up to date on things. And speaking of communication or continuing education, the Radiation Therapist Symposium is at UCSD again this year. It's Saturday, August 4th. Put it on your schedule. If you're interested in attending, it's always a great time. You can email me at mdtaylor@ucsd.edu. Thank you, everybody.